What is crackling, everybody? Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by Number Fire. That is right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and NumberFire.com, as we are breaking down some PGA DFS for the Waste Management Phoenix Open, one of the most fun tournaments of the entire year. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for NumberFire.com, joined here as always by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor for Number Fire. Brandon, we are heading out to Phoenix for this weekend. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Phoenix is always fun. It's always it's not my kind of atmosphere necessarily. I'm a little bit more of a reserved kind of, personality, but
lame.
What?
Lame.
Yeah, I know. That's what everyone told me in college. That's why I dropped out of Penn State. Going to Penn State for me was not the smartest move from a culture standpoint, but
you had the ice cream place, and I feel like that makes up for like everything else.
Never went there.
I went there. I've been there twice in my life, and I went there.
Yeah, but I never had any money, so
okay, fair. Well, yeah, ice cream is expensive, so I get it. You know, that $2 for that cone, that'll set you back a couple weeks, so I get it. But yeah, we get the rowdy atmosphere this weekend out in Phoenix, and I think it's always fun to look at the guys who have done well at this event, because like I feel like it takes a different kind of like animal to do well here, because there are animals in the crowd getting rowdy on 16. You kind of have to have like an air of D-gap to you to do well here, it seems like.
It helps, I think. I can't prove it in the data necessarily, but it's got to help to be a little bit more well versed in that kind of experience. If you're really looking for that tiebreaker, the proverbial tiebreaker, look at some course history here. See who's thrived despite the conditions.
Yeah, and I think it's not like linear. It's not like fan favorites do better, because Ricky won last year. Ricky's a fan favorite, but Matt Kuchar has always done really well at this event, and I'm guessing he doesn't get the same treatment from the gallery as Ricky Fowler will. So it's just kind of a weird event. It should be a lot of fun. We're going to break things down here in just 1 second. But first, if you missed our Super Bowl preview podcast yesterday, make sure you go back and check that out. It is posted breaking down the single game slate for the Chiefs versus the 49ers. That is posted on the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed, which you can find wherever you get your podcasts. Also, the Daily ISO there with Tom Vecchio. That goes up for NBA DFS every weekday. We have PGA podcasts every week, potentially XFL podcasts. Who's to say? I can say we're probably going to be doing those, but hey, make sure you check back for those as well. NASCAR, I believe, starting next week for DFS. I think they're going to be offering for the Clash, so should be a lot of fun. Make sure you are subscribed to get all that goodness wherever you get your podcasts right as they're posted, and leave a rating review while you're there as well. Heading out to TPC Scottsdale for this weekend. It is 7,261 yards and a par 71, as mentioned. Bit of a rowdier atmosphere. The crowd can get kind of nuts. That's certainly something to factor in. It is a smaller field than we've had recently. It's about 130 golfers as opposed to 160, and given how treacherous it's been to find guys to make the cuts, I will certainly take whatever I can get there. Still a top 65 plus ties make the cuts after the first two rounds. So it's still going to be tough, maybe a tiny bit less tough than it has been the past couple of weeks. Brandon, when you look back at TPC Scottsdale and events that have happened here in the past, obviously we want to, factor in a little bit the de-gappiness of the golfer, but what else matters in your model when you're looking at stuff for this week?
Ball striking.
Shocker.
Which, it's just important, it's predictive, and frankly, according to Data Golf, strokes gained approach has been responsible for about 29% of the scoring dispersion at this course since 2010, which is actually lower than the tour average, which is almost 35%, but it's still the most important non-putting stat in the mix. And look, there might be a day where I don't look at approach numbers, but it's definitely not this day. Strokes gained off the tee has explained about 19% of the scoring in this sample, which is above the tour average rate of about 15%. So you can downgrade approach a little bit, but you're going to want to increase the importance in strokes gained off the tee, driving overall, is important, but if you're looking for distance versus accuracy, accuracy kind of matters a little bit more relative to distance. But I'm looking for guys who can do both. So that is something that I definitely want in my golfers this week. So really, I'm just looking for golfers who strike the ball well and who can convert on Bermuda greens. It's kind of the overall recipe. So my key stats: strokes gained approach, strokes gained off the tee, greens in regulation, birdie or better rate, and putting possibly on Bermuda if you have access to those stats.
Yeah, looking back at past events, I also went back with stroke gained off the tee for my off the tee stat because in 2019, distance was, or guys who were longer off the tee did really, really well. Their median ranking in distance for top 20 finishers was 38th for the full PGA Tour season, whereas accuracy was 98th. But then if you go back to 2017, the median ranking for accuracy was 63rd, whereas it was 68th for distance. So mixed signals based on the year, which probably means it was mostly randomness, which is why I decided to go with just off the tee as opposed to one or the other. So I try to choose one or the other when I can because I kind of want to know which archetype of golfer is going to do well in a given week. But for this week, I think it does make most sense just to find the best guys off the tee, however they may wind up getting there. So we wound up on the same page there. I went with approach and around the green play as well because they just happened to pop when looking back at past events around the green more so than usual. So I thought that was interesting too. But is putting going to be a major factor for you or just something you're looking at?
It won't be major because I never want to put too much emphasis on putting because we can see golfers gain or lose 2 to 3 strokes like one way or the other week in, week out, even on a surface that they're statistically superior at or on, I should probably say. But it's something that I'm looking for, but is not an absolute must, which means some of our favorites, some guys who don't necessarily putt super well, but are great ball strikers, could be some golfers I'm targeting this week.
Oh, so 100% Emiliano Grillo.
He's like he's a player for me to consider. He's not like a core play. He's not one of my loves, but I'm very intrigued by Emiliano Grillo.
If I can throw putting out the window, I happily will, as you are well aware. But, you know, we'll see. We'll talk about guys who have done well here in the past recently. Try to find those guys who have that DGAF mentality in just a second. But first, FanDuel continues to give you more ways to win, this time with its big game props pick'em contest. Log into your FanDuel or FanDuel Sportsbook account and answer 15 questions on the Chiefs matchup with the 49ers. If you get between 12 and 14 questions correct, you will earn $100 for free. If you get all 15 questions correct, you will earn $15,000. It's a lot of cash. And the best part is it is completely free to play. Seriously. To enter, visit FanDuel.com or sportsbook.fanduel.com. Eligibility restrictions apply. Let's dive into golfers who have done well at this interesting event in the past, starting off with that guy we just talked about, Ricky Fowler. He won here last year, has also done well here outside of that. What do you see with Ricky at 11-5 for this weekend?
I was muted. That was my bad. I tried to talk through it, but I couldn't.
I was going to stare at you and see what happened.
Yeah, it happens. What are you gonna do? He won here last year, like you said. He's played here for quite a while, 10 straight years. 3 top 26 finishes from 2010 through 2012 before 2 missed cuts and a 46. But over the past 4 years, he's finished 2nd, 4th, 11th, and 1st. He's been playing a good amount of golf as well, kind of at the turn of the calendar, December and January. He's got 3 top 10 finishes before a missed cut on the number at the Farmers last week. Fowler, just 46th in strokes gained off the tee, 64th in approach over the past 50 rounds, according to FantasyNational.com. Doesn't make a ton of birdies, which is always my problem. Every time he comes here, I feel like I'm a little bit concerned about Ricky at this course. He is 62nd in birdie or better rate gained over the past 50 rounds. So I don't necessarily love his profile for this course, but it's still Ricky. He's doing what he normally does, and he thrives here. So there's probably merit to the fact that he just does well in this environment. So I'm not out on Ricky by any means, but I don't necessarily put him near the top of the expensive guys. So at $11,500, where does Fowler sit for you?
He's in a pretty similar zone for me. Something that I think is pretty appealing for Ricky is we always talk about how past champions at an event will get a bump up just because they're going to get more buzz during the week. They'll be on, like the cover boys for different articles and stuff. And that could be a thing for Fowler. But when you click on his player page and see that he just missed a cut last week, that's going to at least mitigate that partially. So I'm not super concerned about him being like the chalk because I think people will still be a bit scared about a recent missed cuts. I think the same appeal goes for Xander Schauffele, who is 11-4, and I'm going to rank Xander higher because he does grade out really well statistically for what I want. So if I'm going at a guy looking for a rebound off of a missed cut, I'm going to pick Xander, but I also am not opposed to Fowler. And Fowler's not like at the top of my list among the top guys, but he's like not near the bottom either, I wouldn't say. I think that Rahm and JT are definitely like in a tier of their own. But I like Ricky more than I like Webb Simpson. That could be a mistake. I like him more than I like Webb, though. I think he's kind of similar to Hideki Matsuyama. I like him more than Bryson DeChambeau. So it's not a situation where Fowler's at the bottom of my list, but he's also not at the top. So I could see him being in my player pool, but he's not a priority for me, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. It's kind of a spoiler, but like Jon Rahm is, to me, the number one. I feel like maybe we're a little bit different there between Rahm and Justin Thomas, but they're both the top two in the field by a good margin. And then I would put Xander third, and then something probably like Hideki over Ricky. But so like Ricky's, I would say fifth out of there.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I'm gonna be able to play five different golfers priced above 11,000 on FanDuel this week. It's probably a week where even in the shorter field, I want to make sure that my guys make the cut, which is never a guarantee anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be too strapped when it comes to my other, like the rest of my lineup. So Ricky might be someone who I don't have any of, and I wouldn't call it a fade so much as just an oversight.
Yeah. I think he's fourth for me. I have him above Hideki, so that's the difference. And fourth is more likely to be there for me, just because I'm going to rotate through some guys. So I could see him making my player pool, but as I said, not a huge priority to me is the way I'd view it. Let's move on to Matt Kuchar. Yeah. Again, he's kind of the opposite of Ricky from a fan popularity perspective, but hey, he seems to embrace the role of being the villain, and I respect that. Kuchar has 4 career top 10s in this event. 3 of those have been consecutively in the past 3 events. He was 9th in 2017, 5th in 2018. Last year was doing really well. Shot a 75 on Sunday, though. Still finished 4th, despite that really bad Sunday. Kuchar has gained at least 3.1 strokes putting in each of those top 10 finishes, but he's also performed well tee to greens. It's not as if he's living just by putting. So I'm inclined to not go here because I do want guys who are a bit more sporty off the tee, and Kuchar doesn't do that. But he knows this course really well. Obviously, we've seen Kuchar have success in the not terribly distant past either. So I'm not going to use him, but I can see the case for him. What is your view on Matt Kuchar?
Yeah, I'm not really going to get there. And look, we all have favorite golfers. Matt Kuchar is probably not too many people's favorite golfer, but I really don't factor that in. I just don't see the course fit necessarily as much as the event form might be there.
Yeah.
It's just really hard to bank on something that you don't see. And I think these are the types of situations where, look, statistically he doesn't fit the course that great. And so maybe he's bound to disappoint this time around. So I'm willing, with so many other options, I already listed 5 golfers who I like above 11,000. I just don't see myself getting to Matt Kuchar.
And I think the other thing to ask yourself is, what are the odds that it burns me not having Matt Kuchar in my player pool? Probably not that big. Like, he could do really well and still not burn you. And I think that that's valuable. The other thing that, for me, pushes Kuchar out of play is I like the guys directly beneath and directly above him quite a bit. We talked about Ricky and Xander. I like both them a lot, and they're right above him. Beneath him, you have Tony Finau and Colin Morikawa. Gary Woodland is right there, too. I like all 3 of those guys more than I like Kuchar. So if I'm in this range, it's not going to be with Kuchar. And I think there's a lot of appeal in Finau, Woodland, and Morikawa, but I'm really okay skipping over Kuchar to get to them.
Yeah, I mean, Kuchar doesn't even rate out. It might feel like he's a safer golfer, but in my simulations, like he's actually got kind of low cut odds, which he can still make the cut. He's expected to, but
Right.
relative to everyone else, he just doesn't really stack up. So I don't have a whole lot of interest in Matt Kuchar.
All right, let's move on to a couple of guys in the mid tier, starting off with Byung-Hun An, obviously a favorite of the podcast. You mentioned putting, maybe not the most important thing for this week. So, hey, let's talk a little Byung-Hun An. Last week, not the best event for him, but he made the cut, got through. It counts. What do you see with him in the past year at the Waste Management Phoenix Open?
So he's played here 3 straight years. He's made every cut, finished 23rd or better in all 3 events. That includes a 6th, a 23rd, and a 20th. He is typically lights out with his irons at this course. He's gained 4.3, 3, and 3.5 strokes from his approach play over the past 3 years, according to FantasyNational.com. He's had at least 4.2 strokes gained tee to green in all 3. And as a putter, he's actually been solid, plus 4.3, plus 1.9, and negative 0.4, which is definitely something that we're okay with from Ben on if he gets us something close to neutral putting.
Something better than negative 4 is good. So negative 0.4 is being his worst one, I'll take.
Or something better than the negative 7.2 that he lost last week on
I felt greens. The full brunt of. Ugh.
But he's on Bermuda. It's a better surface for him. He's not necessarily good on Bermuda, but he's less bad. We say that quite frequently with some of these putters, but he's not accurate. He's 113th in fairways gained, but he has distance. He's 18th there. He's shown a propensity to figure out this course, and at $9,600, he fits kind of any type of lineup that you want to build. I like Ben on this week. Where is he for you?
He's definitely in the mix, I think is the way that I'd phrase that, as like a mid-tier play. He's not my favorite guy in that tier because I like Corey Connors more. He's the same salary. Jason Kokrak is right there. And Brian Harman is cheaper, but also someone that I like more. But this is also a range that I'll probably wind up being in decently often. So even if he's not, it's like different from Ricky Fowler, where you have to be near the top to wind up in my player pool. Whereas with the mid tier, because you can have so many of them in one lineup, I could get to Ben on, even if he's not at the top of that list for me. So I think that he's someone that I'll use, but I wouldn't put him at the top of that list. I'm going to talk about Ches here quick, and then we'll go through this tier a little bit more broadly. So Ches Reavie played his college golf at Arizona State. There are actually a lot of guys in this field who play college golf around here. So Reavie is very familiar with this course, and he's parlayed that into success the past couple years. He had struggled here initially, so the college didn't really translate at first. He missed 6 cuts in his first 9 trips, but in 2018, Reavie did turn it around, finished second. He gained 12.3 strokes tee to green, and he was especially good around the green. Then the following year, Reavie did it again. He banged out a 4th place finish. He leaned a bit more on the putting there, but still did gain 5.3 strokes tee to green. So kind of like we discussed with Kuchar, did benefit from putting, but also did well elsewhere. I think that he's interesting at $9,700, and it seems like we can get there this week. Where does Ches stack up for you in this mid-tier at $9,700, and where is On in that tier as well?
I'd have On above Ches Reavie. I'm not super in on Reavie. Mm-hmm. It really just comes down to the stats, because I think we're both on the same page where this $9,000 range is pretty enticing to us, and Reavie's not necessarily a birdie maker. He's not long off the tee by any means. He's someone who is going to get by hitting fairways, and I just don't particularly see the reason to go after Reavie compared to someone like Byung-Hun An for basically the same price.
Yeah, I think I'm more interested in Reavie than On. That could be stupid, but I think I am. But the problem is I like both Kokrak and Connors more than both of them. So they're really kind of fighting for third, I would say. I don't know. Scotty Scheffler is also $9,900, so he's kind of in this range, and I like Scheffler. But I think if we're looking beneath him, I might actually go with on a little bit lower on the list than you.
Yeah, I mean, look, once you get past basically the $10,000 range, even in like the low $10,000 range, every golfer's got blemishes.
Yeah,
It's just a matter of what
except for
you
Brian Harman.
are. Yeah, he's got like a very, very balanced profile, and that's
Yeah,
why we've been just targeting him at pretty much any course, and he's always cheap. So,
yeah,
but yeah, for me, I don't. Uh, Here's where I sit with Reavy. I won't talk you out of playing him,
yeah,
but I'm probably just not going to get there
yeah.
myself.
That makes sense. I think that's totally fair. And it's kind of like the Fowler discussion where it's like this person may not be bad, but they're not going to make my player pool. Like they're not aggressively awful for this range, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You paused for a second there, and I was like, "Oh man, he's gonna say Shez
No,
is aggressively awful." Didn't
I was on
expect this.
I was on FanShare because they have their
Yeah,
golfers' colleges on there,
yeah.
and I sorted the opposite way, and I saw someone was from Xavier, and I just found that strange, and it is our boy Jason Kokrak. So
Oh, okay. Well, I have no idea where Xavier is, but we're gonna bump up Kokrak.
Ohio, I think. I mean, it's a basketball powerhouse,
Is it?
but
Oh, I don't know.
I mean,
I
they're relevant for March Madness. We
I
don't do
watch like
college
three
sports.
college basketball games a year, and they're all on one day. So I got nothing. Let's talk about some current form and discuss a second tier that is pretty intriguing this week. I think there is a lot of appeal in going kind of top heavy and maybe shoving in Rahm and Justin Thomas in the same lineup. Maybe you want to go one of them with Ricky Fowler or Xander Schauffele, but I'm also okay going a bit more balanced and getting one stud and dropping down to this mid to high 10,000 range. You're going to talk about Sung J M, then I'm going to discuss Tony Finau, and we can discuss this range a bit more broadly because I think it's a pretty good range once again this week, just like it was last week. So, what do you see specifically with Sung J M recently?
Yeah, I don't want to overlook Sungjae's current stretch. It almost feels like the luster of Sungjae's worn off, and we're like, okay, this guy's good. We don't
We're
have
bored
to
of
like
him
go out
now.
of. What's that?
We're bored of him now.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
gotten too good for
basically.
us.
Yeah, but he's finished third, 11th, 21st, 10th, and 36th over his past five events. The 36th was last week at the Farmers, but according to Data Golf, he's played two full strokes per round better than the average golfer over a 20-round sample. He's zero point 0.9 strokes better than his own baseline in that span, so he's golfing really well right now. He's 63rd in distance in this field over the past 50 rounds on the PGA Tour. He's 37th in fairways gained. He's also second in birdie or better rate gained over the past 50 rounds as well. And anytime I need birdies, anytime I need scoring, I like Sung J M a lot. He was seventh here last year in his debut. His best putting splits do come on Bermuda. He's a way to get some balance in your lineup. So I'm very interested in him. But you can talk to me about Finau, and then we'll kind of go over this range together.
Yeah, I like Finau more. So let's talk about this, which could sound wild because Finau has been terrible at this course. He has missed four straight cuts. And given the weird nature of this event, I could see why that would potentially push you off of Finau automatically. But the current form is awesome right now. Finau has four straight finishes of 14th or better, including a sixth last week. And if we look at the 10 events since the end of the last PGA Tour season, Finau has five top tens in those 10 events. Unfortunately, it's pretty easy to explain his struggles here because Bermuda is easily the worst putting surface for Finau, but still he's 10-8. He is a statistical beast outside of the putting. So where does Finau grade out for you in this tier? We'll say this tier is Bryson at 11,000 through Sung Jae at 10.5. Where does Finau grade out for you there?
Okay, so I like every golfer in this range aside from Bubba Watson. So for anyone who doesn't have salaries pulled up, that's Bryson DeChambeau, Gary Woodland, Tony Finau, Colin Morikawa, Victor Hovland, and Sung J M. Those are some pretty enticing names for anywhere between 10.5 and 11,000. Finau might be my number one though. I just based on his stats, you have to kind of put him at or near the top. I know that the struggles are very real at this course, but He's going to be my number one. Sanjay is going to be my number two. And then I might put Victor Hovland number three for the savings. But again, I don't mind any of them. And frankly, Colin Morikawa, if we're looking for somebody who's going to be unfazed, like watching him play with Tiger, this dude is going to be, he's going to be real. He's already really good, but he's going to be someone who just probably doesn't care. And that is something that really draws me to Colin Morikawa as well. So again, I'll put Finau number one, Sanjay number two probably, but I can't really fault anyone for just loading up on this range.
I agree with
What
your
about you?
overall adoration of this tier, and I kind of think I agree with the ranking pretty much. Morikawa is in my player picks, so I like him a lot because the ball striking is nuts. It's between him and Finau for one. I think I'm going to go Finau number one, despite the missed cuts of this event. But I also want to make mention of Victor Hovland. He has not played on the PGA Tour in a while, but he's playing on the Euro Tour recently. He's had a couple of events there, missed a cut. He was 23rd in the other one. But if you look at golfers in this field over the past 50 rounds, per Fantasy National, first in strokes gained off the tee, fifth in approach, 117th around the green. So, like, it's not, he's no Brian Harman. But I think that Hovland is interesting. And because I like this tier so much, I think that kind of increases the odds that I don't get to Ricky Fowler. We were talking about him before. And if you use someone like Fowler or Xander, it's kind of taking away an extra swipe at this tier. So I think I'm going to have a lot of lineups where I go a bit more balanced. I still get my Justin Thomas or my John Rahm in there, but then I jump down to this middle tier in the upper 10,000s for that second guy. I think because this tier is so good, I am more inclined to go balance this week than usual because it is a really good tier. And I agree, Bubba's the one guy in there who doesn't really fit what I'm looking for.
Yeah, you can go a lot of different ways. There are some enticing plays below like 9,000 on FanDuel. Made cuts are very important. Very, very, they're probably the most important thing because that's how you get your fantasy points. So as much as I want to like drop down and target some of these cheaper golfers, I think the optimal way more and more, especially with the new cut odds, which really do make a difference.
Yeah.
It's finding ways to be balanced, and it's either going to be for me like John Rahm and then a lot of $9,000 golfers, or potentially just dropping down from Rahm and getting like 3 or 4 of these guys if I can. So it's a very real possibility for me to just load up on this range.
Yeah, it's a good range. And I think that there is a lot of merit to going in this tier. And like their win odds are still pretty good too. So it's not like you're sacrificing upside to get to them. Hovland's are longer, but everyone else is pretty normal. So I think that it's an enticing tier for sure for this week. Now, you're going to talk about a golfer here in the current form section. I am going to mute you. The people listening to the podcast version and on YouTube can still hear you. I will purposely not be listening to you because I refuse to let me talk you into this golfer. You talk about this person. I'm not going to listen. I'm going to drink my coffee and like wave at me when you're done talking so I don't hear any of these words. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, people will hear me if I'm not muted, which I'm not, I think.
You're not muted to them. I can somehow hear you, despite the fact that I've definitely muted you and I'm definitely not listening.
It's going to be Keegan Bradley. He is $9,500 on FanDuel. He's lurking. Over the swing season, he was 13th at the Zozo, 24th at the WGC, HSBC, missed the cut at the Mayakoba. But in 2020, he has finished 12th at the Sony Open, picked up 4.9 strokes tee to green. Last week, 16th at the Farmers after a first-round lead. So the finishes have been there. Bradley has played TPC Scottsdale 8 straight years, making 6 cuts, gaining strokes tee to green in 7 of the 8, gaining strokes on the green in just 2 of them. And last year, he lost 9 strokes putting at this event.
Shocker.
But Keegan is someone who realistically has top 10 upside, top 5 upside for a mid-level salary. We know what Keegan can do in terms of missing gimmies, and that makes it hard to go full in on Keegan Bradley. But for the price and for the win equity, are you interested at all in Keegan Bradley?
Yes, that's the problem. So like I that's why I don't want you to talk to me about it because like I am interested and I don't want to be.
Yeah.
So I'd really prefer if you just didn't talk about him. It'd make things a lot easier on me. I am trying to avoid Keegan Bradley. I have missed out on a couple of good events, and usually when that happens with Keegan is I will wait until it bombs and then buy back in because we've seen signals that things are getting better. That's very encouraging and that's very good. We should try to buy into golfers who are getting better, but that also means other people will likely buy into Keegan, and Keegan at any sort of elevated ownership is frightening. I don't care about ownership as much as a lot of people do in golf, as much as I should in golf. Keegan's different though, because I know the implosion odds are so high. So I am interested, but I will need to check out the fan share tags before I buy in to make sure other people aren't buying in to Keegan. I think that's kind of like the way I'm looking to view things here.
Look, if you're new to golf, Keegan Bradley is kind of the golfer who can go from about a 99% cut odds to missing the cut
Real
over like the
fast.
final two holes. It's been known to happen. Um, but he also has spike weeks in his potential. He's a very talented ball striker when things are on. Again, he can definitely pick up strokes tee to green, but there's variance and there's volatility, and I'm not completely out on Keegan Bradley, despite knowing that he can single-handedly burn a lineup.
So looking at fan share right now, nobody's talking about Keegan, which means that maybe the implosion odds are not, or the odds he kills you by imploding are a little bit lower. So maybe I should be more okay with him. I think the other discussion is that I do like some other guys more in that tier. Again, like Corey Connors is 96. I like Corey Connors. Byung-Hun An is right there. A little bit higher up Scotty Scheffler. So like there are guys there, but I could see myself getting some sprinkles of Keegan because like he does have the positive volatility as you mentioned too. So if people are going to keep the interest low in him, when again fan share seems to indicate that's the case right now, I could buy in. I just need to keep an eye on that before I fully commit to any Keegan this weekend. We'll
Yeah,
see.
never fully commit to Keegan. Never go 100% Keegan.
I've done that. Well, not 100%, but I fully committed, and I think it was actually fine that one weekend, but I realized that I got out okay and needed to divest immediately. Let's talk about Tom Hoge because he finished 2019 on a really bad note. He missed his final four cuts of the calendar year, but he's turned things around in a pretty dramatic fashion since then. He's been to three events since the new year, and Hoagie's finishes are 12th, 6th, and 5th. That fifth place came last week at the Farmers, and the off-the-tee play is still not good. And that's a major factor, but his approach play has been amazing. He's gained 3.9 strokes in each of those events. He gained 6.7 last week in the 3 rounds at the Stadium course. The issue is that if that approach game is not like top level, he's not going to be able to make up for it elsewhere. So I am interested in Hoge at 9,000, and I'll probably have shares, but I'm hesitant to fully buy in because the off the tee play still has been just kind of adequate. So what is your view of Tom Hoge as a value play at 9,000?
So I've been kind of tracking him for weeks, and I haven't ever fully gotten there. His only positive putting surface is Bermuda, which is not, he's barely above average, above zero there. But he has been kind of fueled by the putter. I mean, the approach play has been good over the past three events, but he's also picked up at least 2.2 strokes putting in each of those three events, according to Fantasy National. So if that's not there, and like you said, he's not going to pick up strokes off the tee. Uh, so I don't dislike Hoge. I'm just kind of still not fully in on him. So he's going to be another one of these golfers where I don't really see the case to talk you out of Hoge for the price, but personally, I don't anticipate having him in my player pool.
Yeah, I think that, like, again, I said, like, I could kind of get there in my player pool and it wouldn't bother me. And there aren't a ton of value plays who I love this week. There are some who I like a lot, but like the volume, the number of value plays is not that large. And I'm not going to want to fully commit to a value play. So I think from a rotational perspective, I could see myself getting there, but definitely not a priority. And I can't view him as being more than a rotational piece, but I'm still monitoring him because if he were to just be like a tiny bit better off the tee, the approach numbers would be really freaking good. So interested, but not committing yet. And I think we're both on the same page there. Let's take a look at what bookmakers are saying about this Waste Management Phoenix Open. Jon Rahm and Justin Thomas pretty well out in front of the pack from a betting perspective. Rahm is plus 650 at FanDuel Sportsbook. Justin Thomas is plus 850. Then it drops down to Webb Simpson, who is 14-1, Hideki Matsuyama and Ricky Fowler follow next at 16-1, Xander Schauffele by himself at 18-1. Another drop-off after that group, you got Bryson DeChambeau and Bubba Watson, 26-1. Then Colin Morikawa, Gary Woodland, Matt Kuchar, and Tony Finau round out the top group at 29-1. Let's talk here about Rahm and Justin Thomas, because they are the top two guys, both in salary and betting. Among those two, who is on the top of your list, and how heavy are you going on these two guys in general?
It's going to be Rahm for me over JT, and it's a little strange because I play a lot of Justin Thomas. I mean, everyone does, but I think you and I just really like him, and he's always got the right stats. But it's really hard to argue against Jon Rahm, especially going back to a course where he's done well. So I do have him number one, and as far as like how heavy to go at either of them, just know that they're about 85% or more likely to make the cut. So you can try to get cute and like fade them, but yeah. I don't think that this is the kind of event where you outright fade the top two because they're so much higher than everyone else in the field for me. So I'm fine with like 75-ish% of either one of them, and it's very possible that every lineup I have will have at least one of them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I am. I'm really in on both of them. But I prefer Rahm, and it sounds like you prefer Thomas.
Is it like a 60-40 split for you between the two?
Maybe 65-35.
Okay. Yeah. I think I am more in on JT just because the stats profile is so well-rounded and good. He's fourth off the tee, fourth in approach, 10th around the green. He has also had success here at this event. Third last year, 17th in 2018. And he's coming off of a missed cut. And I think we talk about this in the podcast pretty often. We want to buy into steady golfers who are coming off of a missed cut, which is why Ricky and Xander are kind of interesting. But Justin Thomas's most recent event was the Sony, where he played in like the 90-mile-per-hour winds. Everyone did. So it's not like this is an excuse. Everyone played in that weather. But I think a missed cut is a lot easier to write off there. He had won the TOC. He was fifth in the event before that. So his form prior to that missed cut was on par with what Rahm is doing now. And my hope is that the betting odds being more favorable towards Rahm are going to push people more towards him, whereas I prefer Justin Thomas straight up. And if I can get him at a slight popularity discount, I'm going to be even more intrigued. So I'm going to take Thomas regardless, but I'll be even more interested if I can get him at lower popularity than I can get with Rahm. So I think I'd agree at 65-35, but with Thomas ahead as opposed to Rahm.
I mean, look, this is like, you can't really argue with either of them. It's not even like you can't go wrong with Jon Rahm or Justin Thomas this week.
Yeah. So let's talk about the guys after them. It's, we got that a group here of guys who are shorter than 20-1. There are 6 total golfers. Are you going to try to get to 2 of those guys in most of your lineups, or are you looking to go a bit more balanced? We kind of talked about this before, but I think it's still worth discussing a little bit further.
Yeah, so when I look at when I try to figure out what the optimal lineup is to maximize my win equity, it's really getting in Jon Rahm and one of these golfers, and then kind of lingering in that $9,000 range. For cut odds, it's basically Rahm and then completely overlooking the $10,000 range, which is weird just because Jon Rahm is so likely to make the cut.
Yeah.
But I I don't know if I can trust that, and I'm probably gonna go with like Rahm and someone, at least two golfers if I can, like above 10,000. I don't know exactly how that'll look, but there is a value golfer in Adam Hadwin at $8,600 who I like quite a bit, so that's going to help. But
Yeah.
it's really hard to pinpoint because the optimal solution, I think, is Rahm and then dropping down and not going below 9,000 at all. But I really think that I want to get access to a few more of these like tier two golfers.
Yeah. I think that Llanto Griffin at $8,500, he was 94 last week when he missed the cut. That's a pretty big discount. So he's kind of in the similar tier to Hadwin to me, where it does give me the ability to go a bit more top heavy. But I think in general, I'm not going to be going too crazy. Now, I do want to have lineups at both Thomas and Rahm together because if I want a lot of both, a very easy way to get that is by having them both in the same lineup. So I'll have some very top heavy lineups, but I really do like the builds where I go Rahm and then jump down to the Finau Morikawa tier after that.
Yeah.
Which golfers have seen their odds change since things opened yesterday at FanDuel Sportsbook?
So quickly, some guys whose odds have lengthened. Shez Reavie, coincidentally, from 60 to 65, and then Kevin Na and Tom Hoagie from 70 to 80.
It's like they saw the spreadsheet and knew they had the heat check kiss of death.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I guess we're both kind of okay with Hideki as a fourth or fifth golfer in the top, but his odds have improved from 18 to 1 to 16 to 1. Gary Woodland, who we haven't really talked about at all, 31 to 29, so some small positive movement for him. Matthew Wolff from 55 to 50. Byung-Hun An, 65 to 60. Daniel Berger and JT Poston, some pretty significant moves from 80 to 65. Adam Hadwin, 100 to 80. Brendan Steele, also from 100 to 80. Bud the Bod Collie, 100 to 90. Max Homa, and Andrew Landry from 120 to 100, and then Aaron Wise, a big shift from 190 to 120. So he's still a long shot, but yeah, that's worth noting.
Very much so. And then which lower salary golfers have odds that are noteworthy here?
Yeah, no, I usually look at like $9,500 and cheaper, but no golfer is better than 60 to 1, even at that salary. Kind of speaks to the class of the field at the top. It kind of drops off pretty significantly around this range, but Brian Harman is 60 to 1. JT Poston is 65. Keegan is 70. And then there's a huge tier at 80 to 1 to win. That includes Adam Hadwin, Tom Hoagie, Billy Horschel, Russell Knox, Brandon Steele, Andrew Putnam, Kevin Na, and JB Holmes.
So a lot of guys in that 60 to 80 range, but nothing shorter, which means it seems like there aren't a lot of golfers who are like hugely mispriced, correct? Right.
Yeah, that's basically what it seems like. And it speaks to considering the balanced build. It's very enticing to get to Jon Rahm and Justin Thomas, but the better play might be really kind of finding ways not to punt with too many of your slots this week.
I think that makes sense, and probably is good in general, but
it probably is. Yeah, probably more and more it makes sense not to take too many risks.
Yeah, with the cut rules being what they are, like there aren't a lot of lineups each week that get 6 out of 6 through. And if you can be one of those lineups that does do that, you've got a pretty big leg up. So I think more so than even in the past, it's always been important. But I think now it's potentially becoming a little bit more so. From a weather perspective, not a ton for this week. On Thursday morning, wind speeds will start around 10 miles per hour. Then they'll jump down to 5 miles per hour in the afternoon. But it's a similar pattern on Friday. Winds slightly lower all the way around. So maybe a slight leg up by stacking those guys teeing off later on Thursday. But the advantage will be really minimal because both waves will have at least one round with wind speeds around 10 miles per hour. So I wouldn't do anything there. Things are pretty calm on Saturday and Sunday. So we should be all clear for this week. With that, let's dive into our player picks. Brandon, starting off with the top range. Who you got there?
I'm going to go with Jon Rahm. I usually try not to pick like the most expensive golfer, but this week I am. It's 1,100. I think Jon Rahm is fairly priced. He's the class of the field right now to me, even over Justin Thomas. He has finished first, second, 10th, and second over his past 5 events. He's also shown that upside at TPC Scottsdale, 5th, 16th, 11th, and 10th. He's an Arizona State alum. He is 5th in strokes gained off the tee, 28th in approach over the past 50 rounds. You can't really find anything to hate on Jon Rahm about this week.
Except that Jon Rahm is 2nd in fan share tags, and Justin Thomas is scrolling. I can't.
You probably passed him up by now. He wasn't that
low.
low.
He's 11th. Sorry. I just didn't see him. Well, it was more dramatic than it should have been. But JT's my top guy.
He's got no tags. I can't find him. He's going to be 0% owned.
Guys, I've got this golfer you've probably never heard of. He might win this weekend. He's plus 850. His name is Justin Thomas. Keep it a secret. Let's not spread this too far and wide.
Yeah.
But I kind of think he's good, and I like him more than Rahm. And I'm going to try to have both in some lineups, but JT is my number one over Rahm. He's, again, coming off a missed cut at the Sony Open, but we have to remember that the wind was pretty wild there, and he won the week before at the Tournament of Champions. JT has now won 3 times in his past 8 events. He was top 5 2 other times, 6 top 10s in those 8 events. His only other bad event outside of this cut was a 17th at the Zozo. So Thomas, top 10 in all 3 major strokes gain stats. I'm going to build around him here. Again, I don't need him to be less popular than Rahm, but it doesn't hurt. So I'm going to go Justin Thomas as my number one guy. Do you want to make this one interesting or no?
Sure.
Okay. I guess if we do a bet between the two, we should exclude them from the win picks, right?
Sure.
Okay. Or we could just make them our win picks.
We could.
You want to go Rahm and I'll go JT?
Yeah, that'll be real spicy.
Okay. I like it. So you have Rahm, I have JT for win picks, and we'll do the longer ones later. Who else do you like in this upper tier here?
I'm going to go back to my boy, Xander Schauffele, $11,400. He's plus 1,800. Missed the cut last week, lost 0.8 strokes tee to green, was basically neutral across the board, especially as a ball striker, which is what I care about. And frankly, one event samples should not be something we put stock into. It's just statistically kind of proven not to be super relevant to look at that and say, like, this guy no longer can pick up strokes with his approach. His irons
Xander's over the hill at 24 or whatever he is.
But the larger sample for Schauffele is that of a very strong ball striker. He's finished 17th and 10th here in 2 tries. We know that fan favorites don't necessarily like that. It's not enough to be a fan favorite, but people do seem to like Xander. So you shouldn't have too much like negative energy flowing his way. And prior to his missed cut, he's been very good. Top 10 in 4 straight events, albeit some small fields in there, but he's definitely a bounce back candidate. And I really don't have any issues with Schauffele this week.
Why isn't Patrick Reed at this event? This is like, we talked about Kuchar being good here, but this is like a Patrick Reed event. Preferably not as caddy here, but like Patrick Reed seems like he would thrive in this environment.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I don't know if. Let's move on. We should probably move on.
Just you're talking around. I was going to hang you out there and see what we get. I was interested, but
no, we're good.
I like Xander too. I like both Xander and Ricky as like bounce back guys from missed cuts. And I talked about Tony Finau before, but all those guys are really intriguing to me. But let's talk about Collin Morikawa a bit here, because even with the competition getting stiffer, Morikawa's held firm. He's been solid recently. He's been 7th, 21st, and 21st the past 3 events. All those have been tougher fields than what he faced in the swing season. He has gained at least 2.9 strokes in approach in all 3. He has been solid off the tee. He actually ranks 1st in approach over the past 50 rounds. So, like, he's been really good. So he's not the longest guy from a driving perspective, which is why I think I would go Finau as my number 1 guy in this more balanced range. But Morikawa is a pretty solid 2 for me. I think you had Morikawa 3rd in this tier, correct?
I think so.
Because you had Sungjae 2nd behind Finau, right?
Yeah, but it's just like it's such a good tier. Morikawa is so consistent with his irons, so consistent off the tee. The The main concern for me is a very small Bermuda sample that hasn't been that good
Yeah.
putting wise, and I'm willing to overlook it, but I'm not necessarily I don't have to overlook it. He hasn't played here before, and I really don't think that if he struggles, it's going to be because he's rattled because he just doesn't seem he seems very composed.
Yeah.
But it's more there are so many other options that he doesn't necessarily stand out as the number one,
Hmm.
but I'm going to use a lot of them, and he's kind of sliding up my rankings
Yeah.
in
I
this
think
range.
being second behind Finau locks him in as someone I'll use pretty often. So I do like Morikawa a lot. I do want to mention that I like Victor Hovland at 10.5, and I would like to make sure I have shares of him. But he's going to be below Morikawa and Finau for me, and I put him above Sungjae. So I think that's where I sit there. Let's move down to the middle tier, the guys between 9 and 10,000. Who stands out to you there?
So I'm breaking the Jason Kokrak like treaty or agreement. I don't know. We need to come up with like a the correct term. If Jason Kokrak is above $9,300, that we shouldn't use him, but
Yeah,
he's
you're stepping into
$9,700.
uncharted territories here.
Oh, we've used Jason Kokrak at a higher salary than
I
this.
think he was like, it was a really weird event. He was like the most expensive golfer or something, and I totally used him there.
He he was like 10,800 at one point. I don't
Yeah.
know, but he's $9,700 this week. It was 21st last weekend. Returns to a course where he's finished 20th and 31st over the past 2 years. He is seventh in strokes gained off the tee. He is 25th in strokes gained approach over the past 50 rounds. He just struggles with the short game. I'm okay downplaying around the green stats this week. Sounds like you're not. But at $9,700, Kokrak's another one of these golfers in this range where he stands out, and I'm just getting like more and more intrigued by like building a really balanced lineup,
Yeah.
which doesn't necessarily. But I'm gonna figure it out. But
Well,
I'm
I
probably
mean,
not gonna punt much this week.
in theory, around the green play is on my sheet, but also my next golfer is Corey Connors. So how much am I actually valuing it?
Eh,
Not enough.
yeah.
It's on my sheet, and it's a nice plus, but I'm not going to omit someone. So Kokrak is someone I like. I just happen to like Corey Connors more. Connors playing some really good golf recently, just hasn't really lifted his salary all that much. He's 96th this week. Connors entering here with a string of 6 straight top 20 finishes. He's been top 30 in 11 of his past 12. Though one non-good finish there was missed cut. That's worth noting, but he's made 11 of his past 12 cuts. That's pretty good. The putting it's not been good, but it's been more stable. He has lost more than 3 strokes in the green twice in that span, which for him is an improvement. Both those came towards the end of September, so he's been okay recently. The ball striking is elite, and it's kind of like we discussed with Joaquin Niemann at the beginning of last year. If he can just be neutral or something just beneath that as a putter, you talked about that with Byung Hun An earlier too, I'll take that. So I like Connors a lot at 96. I put him above Kokrak, but I think they're my top 2 guys in this upper tier. Where does Connors grade out for you?
So if we can include Scotty Scheffler in this tier, who
Sure.
we've talked about, but like he's a really good play at $9,900. But if we exclude him, it's probably gonna be Kokrak, then on, and then Connors in this range for me.
If we include Scheffler, I go Scheffler 1,
Yeah.
Connors 2, Kokrak 3, I think, is the way that I grade that one out. Scheffler's really good, and he fits well with a balanced build. So, like, if you go with Victor Hovland, he's a little bit cheaper than the guys like Finau and Morikawa. It's really easy. It's, like, aggressively easy to get to Scheffler, and I'd like to do that there. So, even with Finau and Morikawa, it's pretty easy. So, I'm very okay with that. What about the lower 9,000 range? Who do you like there?
I'm gonna go with Billy Horschel. He's $9,100, so his price has dropped a lot. It's merited. I mean, he's lost strokes with his approach play and 5 straight measured events. He's definitely been cooling off. We've been really in on Billy Horschel for quite some time, but it's not necessarily panned out the past few events by any means. But even over the past 20 rounds, he's golfing better than the average golfer in the world, according to Data Golf. He's priced as an actual value play. So that tracks. He's played at TPC Scottsdale 7 straight years, missed the cut only once. He ranks 34th or 32nd in strokes gained off the tee, 42nd in birdie or better rate. So it's not the same Billy Horschel that we've been chasing, but we're also not paying the Billy Horschel price. So for $9,100, you could do worse than shooting for a bounce back from Billy Horschel.
I'm pretty sure I paid like 10.8 for him the week he missed the cut.
Yeah,
and he's $9,100 right now. So like if he continues to play as poorly as he has, it could bite you. But like,
yes,
it could bite you with literally anybody in this range. So I think it makes sense to go back to Horschel here, and I'm very okay with doing so. My favorite value of the week is Brian Harman, and he's not quite a value, but he's a mid-range play, and Harman always seems to be kind of underpriced, and I'm pretty okay with that personally. This time he's $9,300 despite having really sparkly stats. He's 30th in strokes gained off the tee the past 50 rounds, according to Fantasy National. He's 24th in approach. He is 19th around the green. So super well-rounded, but also good, like actively good in all three of the stats. And Harman has been to this event 6 times. He's made the cut in 5 of those. He seems pretty steady. So I think Brian Harman fits for me in both cash games and tournaments at this salary, because I want guys who will make the cut in tournaments too. Harman's probably going to do that. Probably going to finish, top 30 or so. And at $9,300, I'll take that no matter what the format is. So, dollar per dollar, Brian Harman, I think, is potentially my favorite golfer of the week. Where does he sit for you, Brandon?
I don't know if I'd be that high on him, but he's close. For the price, it's so good. He's so balanced. The cut odds are really good for the price. He's been playing the weekend at this event in 5 of the past 6 years. Hasn't really shown a lot of high-end upside, but he's also golfing just, I would probably say, better than we've seen him. So I was gonna pick him as a love if you didn't. So that's where I am with Brian Harman.
Yeah, the cut odds are good, like you said, but the win odds for his salary are also really good. He's 60-1. Most guys in the 9,300 range are not there. The second shortest guy at 93 or at 95 or shorter is Keegan at 70. So there's a gap between Harman and the fields, and I find that very intriguing. Let's move down to the actual value plays at $9,000 or lower. Who are you checking out there?
Adam Hadwin at $8,600. He has played the weekend 4 straight years at this event. He's 56th in strokes gained off the tee, but 31st in strokes gained approach over the past 50 rounds. He's got really good Bermuda putting. He's 17th in birdie or better rate gained over the past 50 rounds. Leads the field in good drive rate. For the price, it's about as low as I think I'm going to go. I have some cheaper stabs who I think make sense, but I'm really trying to change up my process and make sure that I'm not doing things that are stupid. And so I'm probably going to cap, my exposure to golfers at about $8,600.
So we're like 55-ish minutes into this podcast, which means most people have stopped listening by now, which makes me feel very, very comfortable doing this. But Hadwin, a recent father, which means that if he wins, it's a new dad win for Adam Hadwin. And I feel like that's something we should value in. Like if your model doesn't account for how recently this person became a parent, I think you're missing out. So dad win for Hadwin. He is not as high for me as he is for you, but I'm intrigued. You look very disappointed. You look sad, like you're ready to eject.
Just
see, if this were the beginning of the podcast, I never would have done it, but I know the odds people are still listening are lower. So like,
if this were the beginning of the podcast, I probably would have entertained it more. But I'm just
no. You were right. You should shun me. So let's talk about Vaughn Taylor instead, because I do want some distance this week, and Taylor is not going to give me that. But he's hyper accurate off the tee, and I think that may be enough for him to pay off. If we're prioritizing made cuts, Vaughn Taylor fits that pretty well. He has made 17 of his past 18 cuts, and don't get a lot better than that at $8,900. Taylor is very experienced in this event. He's got a couple of good finishes in the past. He was 11th in 2018, so he's not flashy, but I am okay kind of selling out for a floor when it's a value play, and Taylor gives me that. So I like him at 89. Is the distance too big of a concern for you to go there, Brandon?
No, I think I'll go there. He's probably my number two behind Adam Hadwin below $9,000. We've been playing Vaughn Taylor for years now, it feels like. Just, I mean, it's just
I think literally
for the
we
most
have.
part, yeah, for the most part, like a balanced like profile for Vaughn Taylor. The big issue is always the distance, but again, there's a little bit more of an accuracy emphasis this week, so I have no issues with Taylor, and he's going to be one of the golfers that I go to most below 9,000.
All right, who else do you have in the value range then?
Harris English. This is a little begrudging just because I'm not saying play the best golfers all the time, and it has nothing to do with Harris English specifically, but uh, I'm recommending him because I have to recommend some extra golfers down here, and I really think that this is a week where you should probably stick above 9,000 for the most part. But Harris English, I don't have any real issues with. He's really balanced at $8,600, 31st in distance, 48th in accuracy, so he's 13th in strokes gained off the tee, but just 98th in approach over the large sample of 50 rounds. He's actually gained strokes in that area in 6 of his past 8 measured events, which is a help. Bermuda is his best putting surface, so definitely don't dislike English, but I really want to maximize my cut odds and reduce the amount of punts, although I do have some listed in my helper on FanDuel if you're interested. Or I can
and yeah, numberfire.com for that.
Yes.
I agree with you where there aren't a lot of guys I really like down here. So in general, I'm trying to be more balanced. But the one guy I really do like who is super cheap is Llanto Griffin. He burned me pretty bad last week with a missed cut. But he's down to $8,500, so I'm okay riding him again. The missed cut was largely because Griffin lost 3.1 strokes putting, and that was only on his one round at the stadium course because that's the only place that had shot link. He was fine tee to green. He's been a plus putter in general since coming back up to the PGA Tour. He's played 11 events since coming back up. He's missed 2 cuts there. Both those came recently. So that's not great because he's been against tougher competition there. But he was rock solid at the TOC and at the Sony. So I'm going to give him another swing here for a bargain salary at $8,500. Would you consider Llanto Griffin, Brandon, or is he a bit too low for you?
He's in my helper as someone to consider down in this range. If we're looking for the March Madness narrative, he went to VCU. So, I mean,
so Kokrak for Xavier, Llanto Griffin. It's also January. I should note that.
Yeah, but you gotta pick like all the mid majors. But for Griffin, I mean, he's pretty balanced. He's back on Bermuda, which is nice for him. I don't dislike it, but again, I'm really trying to like stay out of this range too much, so I might overlook Griffin a bit this week.
Yeah, I think he's kind of like the guy I'll turn to if I really need the salary savings. If I want to go Justin Thomas and John Rahm, I think I'm gonna probably turn to Griffin first. If I want some more flexibility to get back up into like the lower 9,000-ish range, I think I'll probably go there first.
And like some of these golfers are going to make the cut, and if you save the salary and find the guys who make the cut, it's worth it. But in terms of like actually maximizing your probability, you don't want to dig into like 3 of these golfers just to get in like all of your favorite studs.
Right, exactly. Like because not everyone can win. You don't need to get all those studs in. So it's good, and I'm gonna do it with like JT and Rahm, but I'm gonna be in the Griffin tier sparingly, I guess is the way that I'd phrase it. And I do like Vaughn Taylor a lot more. The dad win for Hadwin is also intriguing, but I think that overall it's best to avoid this tier. All right, so we're locked into you have Rahm and I have Justin Thomas for our win picks. You won the bobble hat again, 3rd straight win for you this past week in our weekly head-to-head. So it means you get to pick the value or a longer golfer. You can take Jordan Spieth at 50-1 or longer or 50-1 if you want. Because he is 50-1 at 10-3. We'll go 50-1 or longer though. Who you got?
Yeah, sorted out for 60-1, just so I could, because I don't know off the top of my head where guys are, but 50-1 or longer. I'll take Scotty Scheffler then.
Oh, that's disappointing. Okay.
Well, do you think you were going to steal him?
I didn't
I feel
I
like
didn't realize he was
I
at
feel
50.
like you. Do you want to drop it down to 60?
No, I gave you that. The problem is, you know who I'm gonna pick, so I'm not gonna pick him because I've picked him. I think literally 6 times, right? Brian Harman. I picked him like 6 times, right?
Uh, 5 times.
Okay, so we're not gonna do that again. So I think that my decision is
So
between.
He's finished 18th, cut 72nd, 14th, and 32nd when he picked him.
So if I wanted to do well in DFS, I should not pick him, is what you're saying.
I'm just letting you know.
No, I think it affects things. So I'm going to go Corey Connors. I mentioned that I like him more than Kokrak, so I should just commit to that and say Corey Connors will win the Waste Management Phoenix Open. He's never been here before, which is like mildly concerning, but he's going to win it this weekend anyway.
Yeah, I mean, course history is like you don't have to have a ton of it, I don't think, necessarily to like win it, but
having it is helpful.
Yeah, I would say it's probably not actively bad to know the course a little bit.
Yeah.
But look, he's Canadian. He'll probably get along with everyone, so.
I would hope. You know what? Corey Connor's definitely going to win. I'm just going to go more definitive. So you have Jon Rahm and Scotty Scheffler. Why did I let you do that? I have Justin Thomas and Corey Connors. Yeah.
This is the most confident I've ever been in my win picks.
So they're both going to miss the cut. Because usually when you hesitate is when they do best. So
yeah, I missed out on about 4 wins to start the year.
Yeah, it was 3 in a row. Quite literally, it was actually 3 in a row. So I'm feeling pretty good. Justin Thomas and Corey Connors gonna be in a playoff. One of them will win. Who can say who it'll be? I don't care. I'm excited to see how things play out. Should be a pretty fun event this weekend at the Waste Management Phoenix Open. Looking forward to how things play out. Once again, make sure you check out our other podcasts, whether it be the Daily ISO with Tom Vecchio or our Super Bowl podcast previewing the single game slate for Sunday's game. Just search for the Number Fire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. Brandon, any final thoughts for you today before we close up shop?
I mean, I think that we're advocating for a balanced build this week. We think that's the right way to go. But if you're really digging on some like value plays and you can get access to a lot of the studs, go for it. But just really take a step back and think, what are the odds that this golfer makes the cut? Because you're going to need 6 out of 6.
I think the other thing to think about is which range is strongest. And that's probably a range you want to live in more often. For me, I say the high 10,000 range is pretty strong. So I want to live there more often. If you feel really good about, Webb Simpson, Ricky, Xander, then go different. That's totally cool. But for me, I think that upper 10,000 range is super strong. And I'm going to try to be there pretty often this weekend. That is all the time that we have for today. Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Gadula13, GDULA13.
And I am at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald in front of the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. And thank you to everyone for tuning in for this PGA DFS podcast. We'll be back at you next week with more PGA, potentially XFL too, maybe some NASCAR. Should be a whole lot of fun. We'll talk to you then. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by Number Fire.